For this one, we're asked to find all the zeros, which is basically the same thing as solving it, okay? This one is in function notation, so the very first step that we're going to do here is instead of keeping this in function notation, I'm going to rewrite this as a 0 right here. That's what we're trying to find, is all the zeros. We're trying to find where this graph crosses the x-axis, so our y value would equal 0. All right, so I look at this one here and I say, okay, I look at all three of these components and try to find if they have something in common that I can pull them out. And I look here and I see all three of these have an x. And if they have an x, I'm going to pull the x out of all three of these. Now what's left inside of here is a quadratic. I'm going to try to factor this one. And in order to factor it, I need two numbers that multiply together to give me 10, but add together to give me negative 6. Well, 10 and 1 are factors, give me 10. 5 and 2, of course all the negatives, 2, negative 5, negative 2. But none of that adds together to give me negative 6. So the problem with this problem right here is it can't factor. Alright, so we cannot factor it. And if we cannot factor something, remember factoring doesn't work all the time, but what does work all the time is the quadratic formula. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to break these two into two separate equations, set them both equal to 0. So I have x equals 0, that's this component here, and then I'm going to take this big quadratic here and set that equal to 0. Now all I'm going to do is plug this into the quadratic formula. If you remember the quadratic formula, here we go, it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Alright, now remember that a is my number way out in front, so in this case a would be 1, b would be negative 6, and c is my constant, that's a number at the end, that's 10. All I'm going to do is plug those numbers in for my quadratic formula here. So negative b was negative in the first place, so negative times negative 6 is positive 6. Plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared. Notice how I use parentheses. Don't forget to use parentheses here. It will help you obtain the correct answer. Alright, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, all over 2a. Then I'm just going to simplify this. Negative 6 squared is 36. 4 times 1 times 10 is 40. So this is 36 minus 40 all over 2. 36 minus 40 is going to be negative 4. Alright, well we end up with this negative inside of the square root here. And sometimes that can be a little bit scary, but we've already done complex numbers, so we know that this is an imaginary number. Alright, so the square root of negative 4 is just plain old 2i. So now I've got 6 plus or minus 2i all over 2. I notice here, in order to reduce this, a 2 will go into all three of these. 3 plus or minus 1i all over 1. Of course, we can't write it over 1. We have to reduce it all the way, so it would be 3 plus or minus 1i. Of course, we don't write the 1 in front of the I. So our answer here is just 3 plus or minus I. So we should have a total of 3 answers. 3 plus I is 1, 3 minus I is the second, and then 0. The 0 came from right up here. X equals 0. That's my third answer. So long story short is if we pull out a common factor, and if we cannot factor it, we're just going to use the quadratic formula to solve it.